Hi, I'm Brad Capel. Welcome back to another Waterfront Update. Now, as you can see, it is absolutely glass out here today on the Severn River. And what I want to talk to you about today is one of my favorite components of a waterfront property, and that's the pier, the dock. Because everything happens on a dock. In fact, I'd rather be on a dock than anywhere else in the world. A dock in Key West, a dock in Barbados, or right here in Annapolis. Being on a pier, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of ways to enjoy a pier, and there's also a lot of things you need to know. In fact, there's some risk. If you're going to buy a property, you want to make sure that the pier is in good condition, and you also want to make sure maybe you have enough depth at the end of the pier to put your boat. So we're going to talk about a few of those items today. The first thing is, if you're going to buy a piece of waterfront property, or you own a property and you want to make a change to a pier, you got to make sure that you know what you're getting into as far as permitting. So there's three main permits you have to get with a pier. You have to get a Anne Arundel County building permit. You also have to get a Maryland Department of the Environment, or MDE permit. Final permit you're going to need is an Army Corps of Engineer permit. And that's because the land below the pier is controlled by the Army Corps of Engineers. The actual water space is controlled by the Maryland Department of the Environment, and then all the structure above the water and the pilings is controlled by the Anne Arundel County Building Code. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to talk about is, what's the approximate cost to repair a pier or extend a pier? And then what are some of the restrictions that go along with that? There's also some key items that you want to think about if you're going to come up with a grand plan for your pier, because in the future you may want to have things done, and it's better to get the permit all at once. So from a permitting perspective, any work you do is going to be in the critical area zone. We talked about that before, which is basically 1,000 feet from the mean high water mark, going back away from the water. So a pier definitely falls in the critical area zone. In fact, it's in the buffer zone, and the buffer zone is the first 100 feet. So with a pier, you have to stay 15 feet off your side yard setback. So if you think about a lot, you come in 15 feet, whatever area is in the middle is going to be your building envelope for your pier. And the second thing is, if you're on a river or a back creek, you're only going to be able to go out half of the width of that body of water, or up to 300 feet. And then the third thing is, if you're on a back creek or something where you have a round circular body of water or a cove, they're only going to let you go out half of the way to the center point of the cove. Then the next thing is, you want to consider, you're probably going to want to raise the height of the existing pier if you're doing a pier modification, because we're starting to see a lot more higher tides these days. And then as far as the cost is associated, piers can really range. Depends on if you go with this typical treated pine, treated lumber pier, then you're looking at $300 to $400 a linear foot. If you're going with a composite or an epay pier, the price can go to the roof. Then the next thing you want to think about is, what are the components that you're going to want on this pier? Are you a power boater? Are you a sailboater? Do you like to go out and stand up paddle? If you like to go paddle boarding or kayaking, you're probably going to want to have a step down or a small section of floating pier. If you have a big power boat, you're going to want to have a place where you can plug in your shore power. And most shore power is either going to be a 30 amp or a 50 amp service. And it's extremely important to have that if you're planning to have air conditioning, heat on your boat, or a charging system. You also should consider installing a boat lift. And there's all types of boat lifts. You have everything from a small personal watercraft lift, or a PWC lift, and that runs around 1,500 pound capacity, all the way up to a 40,000 pound lift. And those lifts can run in excess of $20,000. But the biggest thing is, if you're designing your pier, you want to make sure you lay out your pilings so they can accommodate the lift. And then you need to have electrical service that can supply the lift motors. Another thing you want to think about is your lighting system. I know on my house, I put in a 3-way light system so that when I'm at the house, I can turn the lights on to the pier. Or if I forget to turn the lights off after I come back from boating, I can flick the switch at the house and turn them off. I also installed a barn light, which lights up the pier at night. So if you come back and you got coolers and kids and stuff going everywhere, you've got a way to light up your pier. Some of the other things, you want to make sure you have really good cleats so you can tie up a boat properly. You want to have good fenders so that the boat doesn't beat against the dock. And then you might also want to consider what is kind of the jewelry for a pier, which is a copper top for the pilings. And then the marine contractor can actually take the edges of the deck boards and router them so that they're smooth. So if you get up on the pier and you're out swimming, that you don't get splinters. So those are some of the components that you want to think about. And if you're thinking about buying a waterfront property, definitely get a pier inspection. I've been amazed over the years to see what a pier inspector can find, because not only do you have the deck boards, but you have the structural components, and that's where the expense really lies. So there's a lot of things to evaluate when you're looking at a pier and you're thinking about how you're going to enjoy your waterfront property. And if you're thinking about buying or selling, or if you just have general real estate questions, I'd love to help. My name's Brad Capel. I'm with TTR Sotheby's here in Annapolis, and I look forward to seeing you out on the water.